Hey there, this is Jitsi, and this is the Crush Chronicles, a podcast about crushes and how they affect our lives as humans. So grab your coffee or wine, pull out your old diaries, and settle in for today's interview and discussion. Blaine and a few other staff were standing on the steps above me, and I was a step below, clutching some books, chatting about who knows what. Suddenly, I began to lose my balance, slowly beginning to sway backwards, my heels hanging off of the edge of the step, and my free arm windmilling at my side as I breathed out a sudden, whoa. Blaine, seemingly without a thought, reached down and wrapped his arm around my waist, pulled me back up, and steadied me, a gesture that sent hundreds of butterflies loose throughout my body. He was warm and solid, like a moss-covered stone that has been heated by the sun. I wanted to plant myself by the landmark of him, to keep me warm and prevent me from falling again. Okay, this is episode 5 of the Crush Chronicles podcast, and I am happy to introduce Ames, they, them, as the featured guest. Welcome, Ames.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for being here. Okay, so before we get started, I start everybody out with a icebreaker. Who is your current celebrity or fictional crush, or one you had in childhood?
That is a good question.
I start with the hard ones.
I know. It's like the deep philosophical questions of our day. Okay, the first thing, I have had many a fictional crush in my lifetime, so it's very hard to choose. But the one that comes to mind, and I wish she were real, were Lady Dimitrescu from the Resident Evil video game series.
Oh, really? Oh my gosh. For some reason, I thought you were going to mention a book. But of course, video games. Like, that's an option, too. I love that. I'm not familiar, except I know my husband played a Resident Evil game, and it actually scared me just watching. Mm-hmm. So that's all I know. But
gotcha.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about the character.
She is 7 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
And she has gray skin. She drinks blood. And one of her hands is like Freddy Krueger hands. It's like very spiked, like it's very lethal. Again, she is 7 feet tall.
Yeah. And
very elegant. She is a madame. Like, she has 3 daughters whom she loves very much. So she's a great maternal figure, you know, single mom, just protecting her home from the main character who is trying to kill her for some reason. I mean, I don't know why.
She's just minding her own business.
Yeah, she's
living her single mom life.
Right? And it's like he's trespassing, and I don't understand why she's villainized when clearly he has no sense of personal boundaries. But yeah, she's just so fashionable. She wears this like white gown and a black huge hat and red lipstick, and she's very vampiric, but in like the best way. So that is currently my crush right now.
Are you currently playing Resident Evil?
No.
Or is this something from the past?
I have never played the game.
You've never played the game? Oh my gosh, this is so interesting.
I have literally just Google imaged her, and ever since, she has haunted my dreams in the most glorious fashion.
I love that. That's even better.
I recommend everyone Google image her so that she can continue have the following that she deserves.
I definitely will, because I'm very curious to see what she looks like.
Yeah.
But I love that. What an interesting answer. When I wrote the question, never would have thought of a fictional character that wasn't in a book. So I love that. So mine, I'll share really quick. My oldest daughter and I, we recently started rewatching Arrow from what was it? It was like from 2011 or 2010 or something, which I never finished the series. So maybe this time, you know, she and I will actually get through the whole thing. But it just reminded me, man, I'm all about some Stephen Amell. And it wasn't just, I think even when I was watching the TV show, I was like, oh yeah, he's like hot or whatever. But it was when I found out he is a hardcore like WWE geek. Like,
what?
He like loves it. And he was so, when I was following him during the show, like back when I was on Twitter once upon a time, he was so excited because he got to be like one of those guest wrestlers on there, and it was like one of the highlights of his life, and he was just I don't know. I felt like for something that I feel like a lot of people could get picked on for liking WWE, and you know, and some people might think it's like a geeky thing, even though, you know, it's not, to each his own. But he did not care. He was just like, I absolutely love this, and I am all about this. And then he's also very fit and hot while he does it. So yeah, I've had a rekindling for Stephen Amell. That's my celebrity crush.
I'm not familiar with Arrow, even though I know it's about Green Arrow. Is he the Green Arrow?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, I have seen his face.
Yes. All right, so let's just get into this now. Ice has been broken.
Crushed.
Yeah. There we go. Okay, so before attending today, oh my gosh, let's back up a second. Tell us a little bit about yourself so that we know who we're talking to. I don't know why that's not in my my little outline, but yeah.
I had hoped that my identifier would be my fanaticism for Lady Dawn Trust. That's all you need to know about me, clearly. I'm Ames. Pronouns are they, them. I am an aspiring screenwriter. I have written with you for about a year now.
Yes. Ames is my writing buddy.
Yes.
So if you follow me on Substack, when I talk about my writing buddy, I'm talking about Ames.
Yeah, I love film. I want to study Asian American film and media studies. I really like stories that center on queer folks because it's usually what gets me into watching something like, does it have the gay? You know?
Yeah.
Does it have the sapphic residue, you know?
As you can tell, Ames has a way with words.
I learned from the best. So, yeah, that's a little bit about me. I guess, okay, my favorite donut is a plain yeast donut. I think that's something I share whenever I share a little bit about myself. And my favorite book right now is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo.
Oh my gosh.
So good.
I only know about this because my friend Kim, who is a guest that I just interviewed recently, she has that book.
Yeah.
And she hasn't read it yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess she's in for a good time.
A great time.
Okay. Yeah.
A great time. I love the last line. And I think it's just so well penned, like the build up to that last line, that when you read it, it's just like, I'm so glad I read this book. You know, it's one of those books that kind of like stays with you because of the last line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I love those. Okay, so thanks for sharing a little bit about yourself. Okay, so now that the ice has been broken, or crushed rather.
Heck yeah.
We're going to get into it. So before today, you read the finale of the story of Blaine. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have a discussion that's inspired by that part of the story. First question is, this piece is about my senior year of high school, and I started by describing how Blaine and I spent half of our summer together doing a show at a college theater. What were your summer breaks like when you were in high school?
My summer breaks were still kind of like a continuation of my education. So it was preparing for the next English class, doing the reading materials for that. Prep school and tennis camp, which was a decision that I approved, but did not actually really approve because I was really bad at it. Obviously, I'm very privileged and thankful that I received those tennis courses to know that I hate tennis.
It is one of those things you have to try in order to find out whether you like it or not, even if you're volunteered for it instead of volunteering yourself. Yeah, if I had had my way, I think I would have gone to more dancing classes instead.
Not that I took dancing classes, unless you're counting the ones that when I was like a baby I took ballet, as a lot of Asian kids do. But yeah, I didn't really like tennis very much because it required a lot of running. And I like to run, but like in my own way. Like I don't want to run after a ball.
That's fair. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was not into sports. I also took ballet when I was younger.
Did you like it?
I did, but I think because I moved around so much, I was in it when I was, I think in first grade, and then my family moved, and I just never picked it up again. It wasn't because I didn't like it. It's just we just kind of got distracted with the move and everything. But yeah, so that's funny. I didn't know that it was something that a lot of Asian kids did.
Maybe I'm generalizing, but when like a lot of my friends,
Really?
yeah, they took ballet classes as kids. So I was like, oh,
Yeah, that's funny.
all our parents had the same, like they were riding the same wavelength.
Yeah. I don't think much has changed from what I hear and what I understand. But
Gotcha.
so what did you get to do anything for fun during your summers, or was it mostly academic? Or besides tennis camp?
Let's see. I think there were family trips like here and there during the summer, but mostly no. Like it was gearing up for the next thing, which was school. And so it was like when I like graduated from college and had summers, like I guess summer vacation time, it was kind of different because it was like, oh, I don't have to study anymore. What is this?
But yeah, it's kind of like a type of culture shock, I guess.
Sort of, yeah. I agree.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks for sharing that. Moving forward, after reading the final year of my story of Blaine, what parts of the story stuck out to or resonated with you, and why?
What resonated with me was the fact that you didn't really at first know your feelings about Blaine until it was kind of in hindsight. And I felt like that was my experience with a lot of different people that I had crushes on in the past, when it was like, now that you're older, you know what those feelings were in its nascent state. And I thought you penned it well, the way it was kind of inchoate, murky, and that it took time for you to come to that realization. The little delay, even if it wasn't timely, even if you didn't think it was timely back then, I think it was a very human response. So that was what struck to me.
Awesome. I'm glad that you could relate to that, because when I think about it, or when I'm writing about it too, I feel like we probably do this a lot just as human beings, but I feel like I might be the only one that's done that or felt that way, or because it's kind of like, how do you not realize you have a crush on someone? If it's nice to hear that you had experience with that too, and I'm sure we're not the only ones. There's probably lots of people that don't realize until much later that, like, oh, I do like this person, and I had no idea.
It's like coming to terms with not the person that you were attracted to, but coming to terms with that past version of yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of reconciliation is something that is very organic in terms of everyone's different growth.
Yeah. Okay. I described my moment with Blaine in his messy old car.
Mm-hmm.
Although I am now fond of the memory, originally I felt uncomfortable when Blaine struck up this initial conversation because he began talking about religion, something I always felt small about. In what ways do you think religion weaves itself into our lives when we are experiencing a crush? Or if at all?
When you say that, my mind immediately goes to, I guess, like a lot of women's poetry. How there's like this recurring theme of like kind of distancing oneself from the church for this like sapphic love,
Oh, yeah.
So like, what is God to a woman's love, Like, I read this wonderful post that it was just a piece of prose, but it makes me, it went something along the lines of, like, the first sin was trusting someone over God. Adam trusted Eve, Eve trusted the snake, and it goes, I trust you. Like, maybe this is the first sin, and so, like, what is God to a woman's love? What is heaven to sitting by your side on a cool autumn day? It's like,
wow,
beautiful,
yeah.
right? It's like this rejection of the religion as an institution and all the patriarchal, like, teachings that it espouses for
Right.
something that is radical and something that is holy, equally
Yeah.
sacred. So when you asked that question, that's what it made me think of. Like, as a queer person, how does religion weave? Like, I think feeling attracted to, I guess, different genders is, there's something very holy about it, and there's something like that emanates from those feelings a little bit when you look back on them, and it's just golden. That's how I like to think. So I don't, like, there's a weird religiosity to them when you think back on it, as like, oh, that's how I was as a young queer, when I was so excited to see this crush because they had changed my perceptions of attraction and beauty. I think that's what's so beautiful about being queer. It repaints your worldview. It restructures your aesthetics. It makes you reconsider what is truly gorgeous in its own way. Like, before I was queer, I did not consider Hawaiian shirts aesthetically pleasing at all. And now, I have jumped on the bandwagon. Whether that is unfortunate for me or the world, that is up for, I guess, the gods to say.
Well, thank you for that answer. That was a very beautiful answer. And yeah, thanks for sharing, your experiences and stuff with that. We're going to move on to the next question. I may not have realized my feelings for him until much later, if I hadn't had the involuntary response that I had when Brenda confessed her feelings for Blaine.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had a crush on someone but not realized it until much later, which we already know. You did kind of touched on that already. And why or how do you think this happens?
I think, for me, it's kind of like the Catholic upbringing in me. The self-denial. The self-flagellation that comes with a lot of Catholicism in your blood. And it's like, also as like, like, oh, you shouldn't assume that this can happen, because, like, I don't want to assume. Like, it's also like, decorum and lack of self-esteem. I don't know. But it's like, it takes a lot of strength to come to terms with something, and sometimes that takes time, like, to accept, like, oh, I did have feelings for someone, because it puts you in a vulnerable place. It puts you in a place of wanting.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, and sometimes it's better to say you don't want something when the ramifications of rejection can, like, intimately felt. So you just say, like, oh, I'm not cold, as you put in your hands in your pockets,
Yeah, so it's kind of like a self-defense mechanism in a way, to keep you from going to that vulnerable state, or a sense of denial too, or like you said, with the the Catholic upbringing and what's going on in your mind, I can't even go there because, like, I shouldn't, that's like sinful, and we just shouldn't even go there because we're not supposed to, type of thing.
The only man I have in my life is Jesus,
yes.
Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. Just kidding, no. But that's, like, kind of the vein of reasoning that I think young Ames had in their mind. Like, oh, I don't have time for this. And also, it goes against, like, my priorities. Or, I can't.
You don't have time for this.
Yeah, like, I can't be so frivolous. I can't have romances. What am I? Some heroine in an Austen novel? No, I need to.
You're a heroine in the Ames novel.
That novel has to end. Its first draft is like not going well. And I know the first draft's role is to just exist, but my God.
Well, that's why I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but on my website, it's the 9 Lives of Rachel Jitsawat, because it takes a lot sometimes to figure yourself out. And also, there was a memoirist that I was studying. She has a book out that says 7 drafts. So she said it takes 7 drafts to get to your good one. So yeah, maybe you're not on that draft yet.
Why 7? Is it like 7 deadly sins?
No, it wasn't that. I think it's just more of, technique, and, we write things and then we get attached to it. We've got to be able to cut it out. And it just, I think she actually did like a trial and error of, really trying to see like, okay, how many, like, what's the average amount of drafts that people have to write before they're like, yes, this is it. And it happened to be 7, which just happens to be the most magical number. So
it is a good number. Yeah. Well, my editing process. It differs from that.
Yes.
It's like
everyone's different.
Yeah. I guess like I want to ask you, how do you think religion weaves into crushes?
Oh man, I mean, I don't think I have anything much different to say than what you already brought up. I do think, like, especially with pieces that I have yet to release, there was a lot of stuff that really stifled me into trying to be the good girl. My family wasn't the most religious. Like, we didn't go to church on Sundays because my family, both my parents worked full time, and sometimes that included weekends, so we didn't go, and we moved around so much. There's also like never really any time to even find a church. But I did go to church sometimes with friends and things, but I was really just trying to be a good Christian girl, and I really, I think, also held myself back. So I guess that's a way that, especially for women, to kind of not take leaps when it comes to crushes. Like, we're not going to, or at least back then, like, we were not going to like go after him as much. And I honestly don't even know what it would have been from the guy's perspective as far as religion, because I can't speak to that. I feel like they all the time just got the boys will be boys. Like, I still feel like they kind of could have just done whatever they wanted. But besides the like, oh, like, maybe you would pray and be like, please let him like me, or whatever. That might be like another way that it might come through. If for some reason coming to mind, I know I mentioned the craft in this book, but which they also went to Catholic school, but very much their religion got intertwined with their crushes as well, and unfortunately it didn't end very well for that one crush. But yeah, that's a media visual that comes to mind. But yeah, I think you pretty much had kind of hit on it as far as my opinions too. I think I'm right there with you.
You bring an interesting point about the gender dynamics of courting, though, because, it is like, when I was growing up, it was certainly expected that, like, the girl shouldn't make the first move. In, like, K-dramas and, like, the media that we watch, too, it's like, yeah, that's nice, but it's not ideal, because there's, like, a certain kind of desperation that is imposed upon the woman when she does that, which is such a awful way of denying. It plays into like the denial that women already feel with their desires in society, like repressing it as like, you shouldn't, then you look like you want a harlot.
Yes, I agree. And also I feel like thinking back on things that we would see in the media, if there were like a thing in a TV show or something where the girl did ask the guy, it was like a really big deal. Like it was like the point of the show, like, oh my God, like she actually had the courage, like she didn't care. What a like powerful girl, because she got the courage to like go and ask. And yeah, it was just made like over dramatic when really it shouldn't be that big of a deal. Like we should be able to ask each other and it not really matter like what gender you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. There was a moment in this piece when Blaine basically acted as my knight in shining armor. A small moment, but a moment all the same, when he saved me from falling down the stairs. Sorry, I'm laughing at past Rachel. Like, of course she did. When he had his arm around my waist, it was a butterfly-inducing moment for me. What is a butterfly-inducing moment you had in the past, and what did it mean to you?
I thought, first things first, I thought that was a very gallant moment in this chapter about Blaine, and I remember when I first read it, I was like, oh, okay. Okay, Rachel.
Okay, good. I'm glad. I'm glad that that came out.
Yeah, and the fact that, you know, like, this was someone that you didn't know you had feelings at first, and, like, the way it just kind of blossomed, it made me very happy for younger Rachel. Yeah, because it was quite very much like, you know, a scene straight out of the stories that we watch when we're or read about when we're younger. It was a moment of chivalry.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me too of what the Princess Diaries, how Anne Hathaway's character, she wants her foot popping moment. So it was a butterfly inducing moment, but I kind of equate that with like the foot popping moment.
Let's see, when have I felt butterflies? I'm trying to think about my moments with Lady Dimitrescu. Maybe when she cut off the protagonist's hand. I thought that was so cool. No, I'm kidding. Let's see. Oh, okay, so I recently went to Philly and I was swing dancing there at this event called Rittenhop. It's a public event where in Rittenhouse Square they just dance. They just swing dance.
How cool.
It is. And they invite anyone to join. And I was dancing with a woman, and she, like, mid-dance, she had me lead her. So, like, I was following. So there are two roles in social dance. It's usually someone leading and someone following. And together, their connection creates, like, this tacit language that fruits into, you know, different dance forms. And I thought that was so cool that she switched roles mid-dance, because it was like, oh, you want me to take the reins? Me? And of course I did it not very well because I'm still a new leader.
We're all our harshest critic. I'm sure you led very well.
I did not, because here's the thing. Here's what happened. When she switched, I was like, oh. And I just paused. And then I was like, okay, I really like that. I said that to her. And then she was like, okay, that's nice. Can we come? We're off rhythm now.
She's like, okay, but yeah, let's keep dancing.
I know, like, business. And so, I thought that was really butterfly-inducing. It made my heart flutter just a bit, Rachel. I'm not gonna lie.
I love that.
Like,
because dancing is also such like a intimate, like emotional thing that we do with our bodies too. So, yeah, that's awesome.
I would say it's an intimate experience with yourself, but not necessarily an intimate experience with others, because that's like kind of the beauty of social dance. At least for swing dance. I don't know about tango, but it's not. It doesn't require a lot of sensuality, unless you want that. Like, it's very casual and festive and, yeah, very improvisational. So it's, like, on the go, and even if you make a mistake, you can kind of play it off as, like, that was how it was intended. So, yeah, it's a beautiful black dance, and I am so thankful to have been a part of that during my Philly trip, because, like, to go back to your question, I think what it said about me was I am really into gender fluidity. Because there is like a gender dynamic to leads and follows. Because while like the swing dance community in general does espouse like the creed that anyone can take any role, mid dance, even, but usually demographically leads tend to be cis male, and so I thought that was so amazing that one, she was a female lead, and two, she invited me to partake in that kind of role mid dance, and she led it so wonderfully. Like she just, the transfer of power was so gracefully done.
Oh, I love how you phrased that, the transfer of power. Yeah, it really speaks to, like, it gives more like emotion into like how it felt. Yay, that's such an awesome experience. Thanks for answering that question. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next one. The turning point for me in my relationship with Blaine was realizing I had a crush on him, but by the end of my senior year, certain events flipped that around and I was suddenly turned off from him. I get a little embarrassed by this because I realize I essentially had this relationship with Blaine that occurred only in my mind. But isn't that kind of what everyone does when they have a crush? What do you think?
I think that was a very natural development to happen. Like once you get more information, you reprocess and
Recalibrate.
You recalibrate. There we go. Yes. And sometimes the shapes of people's relationships change when you get that new intel. And that's okay. It's just a part of growing up. And I guess like in my experience when that happened, I don't know, I think attraction is so ephemeral for me. As someone who was in a relationship for 5 years, which I feel like, given, it doesn't change to the fact that desire is so ephemeral for me. Like, it just comes and then it goes. And it's like, I'm just like standing there, like at a bus stop, like, the bus left. What happened? You know?
Yeah.
So knowing that, like, desire, it can be flighty for some
That's a
folks.
good word for it.
The fact that, like, it changed for you, it's no one's, like, we can't control our feelings.
Yeah.
We can control our actions, but, like, how we feel, like, there's no fault in that. And so once you receive that information, it was like, well, I guess, because your relationship with yourself is so much more important than with anyone else. And so when you learned about that, about Blaine, and like towards your senior year when things transpired, read more in your chapters, it like clearly made your relationship with your desire to him change as well. And I think that it happens.
Yeah, it does. And again, I'm sure I was not the only one. You've already stated that you've experienced it too. What do you think like happens when, you know, we're kind of creating this relationship with our crush, and like essentially in our minds, like what do you think, you know, that does, you know, for whether you're talking about like our relationship to ourselves, or I guess it really is like, you know, kind of a relationship that you're giving to yourself, because even though you're kind of, you know, you have this crush on someone, you have, you know, this idea of what it could be like together in your mind, or you know, or just, you know, thinking about your feelings for that person but keeping them to yourself in your own brain without sharing them, and you're kind of like essentially having your own little relationship. What are your takes on that?
Yeah, I kind of want to echo this paper I read by Lauren Berlant. She writes, there can be no love without fantasy.
I think you shared this with me before, and because I love that line as well.
I love that line so much because you, like, when you have desire, you are already creating this imagination of yourself in that space, and it's that is the fantasy of yourself in that relationship. And so when you are feeling the budding blossoms of love or attraction, you're already negotiating your positionality in this scene with yourself and the different, social structures that may be in play within that fantasy. So yeah, like when you are fantasizing about a crush, yeah, you definitely have a relationship with that fantastical version of them, even as you are cultivating the real relationship with them. And that fantasy is, like, in a sense, like, not really a relationship with them per se, but a relationship with your version of,
Yes.
like, your aspirations, all your hopes. It's a relationship with yourself. So it's like, yeah, sometimes when that vision that you have of yourself in that relationship doesn't really match the reality of it, yeah, it makes you have to decide whether you want to keep it or whether you want to cultivate it towards that direction. Like, it gives you a choice. It gives you that agency. I love that line so much.
Yeah. And what you're saying, it also kind of, not to, beat the buzzword, but I can't think of another phrase, but it almost feels kind of like a form of self-care.
Yeah.
That, you have the fantasy, but it's also a way for you to just try and figure out what you want from a partner.
Mm-hmm.
And then if that doesn't come to fruition, then yeah, like you said, you have a choice. You can either keep trying and adjust or move on.
Yeah.
And
right?
try to move on. As if
Yeah.
nobody ever said, oh yeah, I'm just going to move on from a crush, and it was easy. I mean, here I am 39 writing about all of them, so
Better late than never.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, thank you. I love that you shared that line. Yeah, I do really love that. Okay, if you were to write your own story, which crush in your life would you write about and why?
Oh, goodness. If I had to write something, which crush would I write? I would probably write about, like, my queer awakening crush.
Yeah, that's probably really important.
Oh, goodness.
Very milestone, very important.
Yeah, because I think that experience, it honestly didn't teach me a lot about that person. I barely still know that person. But I learned a lot about myself. And I think that's what you're doing with this series. You're continuing that self-illumination by looking back and uncovering the archive of your memories. And I think that's what I would want to do with that experience. Because, oh my gosh, Rachel, like, that person was already in a relationship.
You know what? It happens.
And I didn't
like
know.
you said, you can't control the feelings that come out. They just come out.
I didn't know. So, like...
Oh, you didn't know they were in a relationship?
Know, because they were just, like... It was, like, senior year. And we were about to graduate. So there was, like, this impending doom about it. About my attraction for them. Because it was, like... It can't last. Beauty fades. Nothing gold can last. So there was something incredibly fatalistic about it. And yes, it was. Because it was like me shedding my heterosexuality.
Yeah.
The heterosexuality that never was, really. But, like, yeah, they were, like, just about to, like, finalize them becoming girlfriends with someone else. And, like... Because I didn't know that, I gave them my final art project that I had worked on for months, of, like, this Iron Man.
Like comic book Iron Man?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I had, like, sketched it. Like, that was, like, my final art project. I think that says a lot about what Marvel heroes I like, because now I'm just, like... Why would I ever be into basically the glorification of the military-industrial complex? No. Like, even with like the recent.
I'm sorry. I've never heard Iron Man described that way, which of course is true. It's not wrong. But I just had to dwell on that for a second. Sorry, go ahead. Please continue.
I just, it's like, okay, weird tangent. When it was announced that RDJ was going to become like that new villain, I was just like, again.
I have feelings that is a completely different podcast conversation. But yes, I thought the same thing.
Yeah, like, you already, I'm tired.
Yeah.
And anyways, but like, I was really into Iron Man back in the day because the crush was an Iron Man cosplayer, and like, yeah, it was like, oh, they're into it, I'm gonna be more into it kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so like I rolled it up like a diploma and handed it to them at graduation, and I remember my mom going like, why are you giving that? Like, I would frame it like, you should give it to me instead. And I was like, no.
That's such a mom thing. I will take it. Wait, you could give that to me,
right? Like,
such a mom thing to say. As I can say that because I'm a mom. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, like I get it. You're trying to validate, the artistry of like that your kid worked on, and like, yeah, but it wasn't for you, Mom. Like, you don't cosplay as Tony Stark. Anyways.
Tony Stark doesn't mean to you what it means to them. Okay?
It doesn't. And so, yeah, like, I would probably write about, like, how, I guess, pure that was. Just, like, so unabashedly not caring about whether I was rejected or not. I was just like, I want you to have this. Remember me by this. And
it's a beautiful gift, too. It was a piece of artwork.
Thank you.
That meant something not only to them, but to you, too.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I just like that bit. Like, I'd like, just the fact that I was like, not sure about my sexuality, because I didn't come out fully until about 2 or 3 years later. But that in and of itself was like clearly demonstrative of how much of a baby gay I was.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like, I think that experience, it says more about you and your chapters with the Crush Chronicles. I think each one shares about how much you cared and how much you yielded and respected the desires that your younger self had.
Thank you. That's such a nice way to put that. That's
Yeah.
such a compliment to me. Thank you. But I did want to go back and ask, so you kind of described yourself as like you were unabashed when you handed over the Iron Man diploma. So were you not scared, like, or nervous about giving the gift? Because I would have been like, oh my God, like, I'm going to give this gift to them. Like, oh my God. Mm-hmm. Like, so, but you were just like, hey, this is for you. Like, remember me. Like, we're graduating.
Yeah. It was definitely kind of the latter, because my mom was like, I'm going to have to, like, my mom was like, time's a ticking. We have to go home. And so I was like, oh no, I have to do this before I leave. And it was like, yeah, I'm not going to let graduation stop this.
I love that. Yeah, that was very, like, very strong main character vibes. It was. You were like, I'm owning this moment. So
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank you.
I didn't say anything to Blaine at graduation.
I mean,
I don't even know if I saw him.
It worked out that way, though.
Yeah,
you know,
it did.
Yeah.
So with that, we have reached the end of our time for the episode. But before you go, would you like to share with listeners where people can find you if you're on social media, or do you have a website or anything?
Yes, you can likely find me on my video essay channel at Real Takes on YouTube. That's REEL Takes.
Awesome, thank you. And I will link that in the show notes for everybody to be able to see. But that's so exciting. Thank you. All right, so thank you so much for coming on and sharing everything with us and, answering all of my questions. So yeah, thanks again, Ames. It was a pleasure having you.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Thank you so much for listening. It means the world to me. If you like this episode and would like to hear another, please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If you have some extra time, check out my Substack at jitsi.substack.com. The link will be in the show notes. That's where you can check out my memoir series that inspired this very podcast. And you can take a look at the real life stories and experiences that inspired the topics that are discussed in each episode. If you'd like to support the show and keep future episodes coming, you can buy me a coffee. It helps fuel the writing fire. The Crush Chronicles is 100% produced by me, Rachel Jitsawat. The music is by Musictown, and the sound effects are by Pixabay. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep crushing it, because no one can crush it like you can.